My name's Jess Heffernan, and together with my colleagues Astrid Pullman, Maeva Broch, and Jana Balin, we're going to share with you the science we've done in developing new opportunities for creating vegetable-based products for children. The VegKit project is a 5-year project funded by Hort Innovation using the Vegetable R&D Levy. It centres around 6 key activities that aim to increase the vegetable intake of Australian children and have been designed to provide a collection of practical tools, resources and interventions to support children, educators and healthcare professionals and engage with industry. This webinar will focus on the outcomes from the 6th activity, Create Supply Chain Initiatives. This component of the VegKit program consists of 2 interlinking activities that involve the industry supply chain through to early primary school settings, and this webinar specifically focuses on the research we have undertaken in the area of supporting the development of new vegetable-based products for children. Throughout this webinar, we'll discuss in detail the processes we have been through. We started with a scientific literature review to identify key properties that influence children's acceptance of vegetables. From there, and using our own expertise, we've mapped these properties to a scientific framework in order to develop a model that supports the development of vegetable-based products for children. In developing the vegetable-based product concepts that will be presented today, a product mapping exercise was undertaken of commercially available products, both vegetable-based as well as sweet and savoury snacks, specifically targeted towards children. This was done to determine the properties of these products that are intended to attract children. This product mapping exercise, combined with the model, incited a brainstorming session where the concepts were developed. A number of these concepts have already been evaluated by parents and children. The last part of this activity has been to disseminate this knowledge to industry, and this webinar is the key component of this dissemination.
So as mentioned by Jess, the first step that we started with is to undertake a literature review on research done to increase children's acceptance for vegetables. And there's a lot of research done in this area, but in this review we tailored it to factors that were specifically relevant to a product development setting. And we have mapped those factors to an existing theoretical framework for eating and drinking behavior. And there were 4 main factors that were identified, 2 that were related to the person and 2 that were related to the food. So if we start with the person-related factors, those are the ones in blue on the top of the slide. So on the left-hand side, we see the biological and physiological factors, and an example of that is taste acuity. On the right-hand side, we see the psychological factors, and those would be, for example, the previous learning experiences that a child has had. Then if we look at the bottom, these are the product properties that are related to vegetables itself. So we identify intrinsic product characteristics. So those are where all the sensory properties are located. And then on the right-hand side, we see the extrinsic product characteristics. And this is where all your marketing variables are located. If we then dive into the different factors in a bit more detail, so looking at the biological and physiological factors, we can establish that children live in very different sensory worlds than adults. So children are less sensitive to sweet taste and they are more sensitive to bitter taste. And combined with an innate liking for sweet and a disliking for bitter taste, the resulting effect is that children like sweetness at higher levels than adults do, and they reject bitterness at lower levels than adults do. At the same time, children acquire a liking for salty and fatty, energy-dense foods very early in life, and part of that is due to positive post-ingestive feedback. If we then look at the key sensory properties of vegetables vis-a-vis other core foods, we've done some research on that in our own lab, which is shown on the right-hand side. And we can see then that all core foods, with exception of vegetables, have got key taste properties that we either innately like or acquire very early in life. But vegetables don't have any of those properties. And as a product category, they are also higher in bitter taste. Now, obviously, there's a lot of differences between vegetables, so they're not all bitter tasting. So then In terms of taste perspective, children are quite different, but also in texture perspective, children differ from adults. So there's a lot of physiological changes that are happening in the mouth as a child grows up. So first, teeth erupt, they are then lost and replaced by adult teeth and molars. And also the muscles in the mouth, for example, that require a force to chew down a food, or tongue muscles that need to manipulate foods in the mouth and prepare them for a safe swallow. That is all a very dynamic process, and children gradually develop that ability better. So if we then look on the next slide on the psychological factors, we can see that most of our food preferences are learned. So nearly all of our odor preferences are learned, and combined with taste, that determines our flavor preferences. And childhood is a very critical period for the development of food preferences. It's also been shown that our food preferences and intake track from childhood into adulthood. So it's very important that that learning happens at that stage. Then on the previous slide, we saw that vegetable have not got the sensory properties that are closely related to our innate likes and dislikes, which means that vegetable acceptance is largely a learned behavior. Now, two of the main mechanisms to be learning vegetable acceptance are familiarity and exposure. Repeated exposure, there's been an overwhelming body of evidence that repeated exposure is effective in increasing vegetable acceptance. It only takes a small amount of vegetables, and on the slide we see an example from our own lab where with the number of exposures that a child is receiving a small amount of vegetables, that acceptance for that vegetable builds. Another mechanism is associative conditioning, and simply said, that is the positive value of something else transferring to the vegetable when they are repeatedly combined together and offered to the child. So that positive item could be a liked flavor or a liked taste, for example, but could also be something like a positive role model. If we then move on to the food properties, we start with the intrinsic properties, and we can start by saying that children are very much driven by the sensory properties. So acceptance is really critical to consumption in children. This is also the case in adults, but where adults can take into account health factors in deciding what to consume or what not to consume, with children it's very much driven by their acceptance. Looking then at specific sensory modalities and children's acceptance for vegetables, we can say that very few studies have been done on specific aspects. And in part of that, it is because it's difficult to single them out. So if you change things in vegetables, for example, through cooking, most of the time there's changes to appearance, taste, flavor, and texture happening at the same time. So the interpretations need to be taken with a bit of caution in that regard. So if we look at the studies that have been undertaken, we can see with appearance that is a dominant modality in general, but for children, especially for young children, it's the most important property for categorizing foods. At the same time, we also see brightly colored vegetables are being preferred by children, and atypical colors have been shown to increase willingness to try. And you have to think about vegetables that are offered in, so these are naturally existing cultivars, such as the carrots we see on the slide at the bottom. And anything but the standard color has been shown to increase willingness to try in children. At the same time, we also see that fun shapes are preferred over slices and sticks, and slices and sticks are more preferred to chunks. If we then look at taste and flavor properties, we see that our innate likes and dislikes also transfer to our liking for vegetables. So sweet vegetables are liked more and consumed more than neutral and bitter tasting vegetables. It's also been shown that addition of condiments or other tastings have enhanced acceptance, and this has been shown for sweetness and saltiness, whereas for sourness, such an effect has not been found in vegetables. And part of the effect of sweetness and saltiness is explained by that they can mask bitterness or suppress bitter taste of vegetables to some extent. If we then look at the texture, there's been some studies that have shown a preference for raw vegetables over cooked, but this is very vegetable specific. So it's hard to translate that across the whole category of vegetables. At the same time, we see that difficult to manipulate textures in the mouth have got a low appeal amongst children. And in the vegetable context, you have to think of mushrooms that can be slippery, or cherry tomato, where the inside and the outside have got very different textural properties. At the same time, in the non-vegetable but food domain, it's also been shown that novelty enhances appeal amongst children, and that a third of children liked extreme sour tastes. If we then move on to the last category of factors, these are the extrinsic properties. So these are factors that are not intrinsic to the product but can be changed, for example, in marketing or in the packaging. Most areas, very few studies have been published. But an exception is the use of cartoon characters, where there's quite a body of evidence that showed that it increases acceptance and intakes of vegetables amongst children. At the same time, it's also been shown that creative, imaginative language increased acceptance, and the example on the right with the broccoli is an example from a recent education campaign from the Food Bank in Western Australia, where they've used both cartoon characters as well as creative language in their campaign. A last word then on claims. So it's been shown that sensory claims increase acceptance for vegetables amongst children, and you have to think of claims that refer to a good taste, whereas claims that relate to health, such as vegetables are good for you, have been shown to decrease acceptance for vegetables. And I'll now be handing over to Maeva for the next slide.
Thank you. So realizing that children live in different sensory worlds and respond differently to product properties than adults, we looked at the current offering only to realize that children's vegetable intake relies heavily on the consumption of fresh vegetables that have been prepared at home. So we see an opportunity to increase the offering of vegetable products for children using fresh or processed vegetables, using some of the points that were presented earlier. We had previously conducted a review of the literature and a product mapping exercise. We specifically looked at confectionery, chocolate, and snack categories. And with the idea to fast-track product development, we developed a new theoretical model, the Saro-Kampov model, that you can see on the screen. And the model lists the important factors to consider when developing vegetable-containing products for children to maximize success while aligning product features to children's expectations. So we've included intrinsic and extrinsic properties and psychological factors that could play a role and we could play with when developing new product containing vegetables to increase the appeal for children. So some example of intrinsic properties to consider would be bright colors, the introduction of contrast in the appearance, the taste and the texture, but also fun eating experiences or flavor pairing. In psychological factors, we see familiarity with products, which correspond to repeated exposure, or mimicking parents would be an example of positive role models. So using the model, we generated a list of vegetable-containing concepts that are presented now on the screen, and I'll go through each concept and give you a bit of a description. So the first concept is the fairy dust. It's a vegetable-based powder which is served on its own or with added flavors. And children can sprinkle the powder on top of food or use it to dip their vegetables in it. Children can mix and match flavors and texture and really become a food adventurer. This is a fun and unusual way to increase vegetable intake. Second one is the Rainbow Squeeze Mate. That's really a sauce dispenser which is filled with vegetable-based bread. The item can fit in the school lunch bag or can be used just before lunch to prevent the bread from getting soggy. vegetable sheets. So that's crispy vegetable sheets of different colors with a similar texture to nori sheets, and they contain colors that are derived from vegetables powder. The Crunch and Sip kit so Crunch and Sip is a school program that happens at a set time, usually in the morning, and children are encouraged to consume fruit and vegetables that have been previously prepared by parents at home. And they also drink water only. So here we're proposing a concept that would use that meal occasion, and really it's a ready-made portion of fresh vegetable, whole or cut up for that occasion. Poppables of vegetable puffs, so that those are vegetable puffs similar to the texture of popcorn, and it could come in all sorts of vegetable flavors and matching colors. Veggie sticks are vegetable kebabs that can be consumed raw or cooked, or you can also think of making a sandwich kebab. Pizza base, so that's ready-made pizza bases with vegetables incorporated in the dough, giving it a different color and flavor. Yogurt with vegetables, that's very self-explanatory. It's brightly colored yogurt with vegetables. Vegetable ice creams or ice blocks, so ice cream or ice blocks with vegetables, with or without fruit flavors, and we also tested the idea of an extreme sour tasting block. Sipa soup is along the lines of the popular Sipa straw. These straws are filled with vegetable-based powder, and children can sip cold soup or broth through them. That's another way to add fun to meals and play with flavors. Veggie bites are patties or nuggets containing vegetable or vegetable purees. The filling comes in a specific vegetable flavors, but you can also create single flavor packs or surprise packs with a mix of flavors. Rainbow dippers is pretty much along the lines of the cheese dipper concept, but with vegetable-based dip, and it can come in one or more flavors and colors, like the rainbow dip that we're presenting here. Children can dip vegetable sticks or vegetable flavored breadsticks or rice cakes. And the vegetable wraps or bread rolls, so that's again a bit straightforward, so just vegetable powders would have been incorporated in the dough. And the last one are the children's cooking kits, so that's family meal boxes containing fun recipes that can be prepared by children or with the help of children. And we're also thinking of adding a chef's hat and a child-friendly knife to make it even more fun for children. So the list presented here is of course not exhaustive, but those were the ideas that the project team selected to present to children to start testing our model. So we have many more concept ideas, but we didn't have time to present them today. And those concept ideas were refined through multiple discussions to make sure that the concept could be easily conveyed with a few images on the slide. So the range of concepts presented include concepts made of a variety of vegetables, so fresh or processed. They cater for various meal occasions, so you can think of having some at snack time, at lunch or dinner, and they target various distribution channels. So that would be retailers, but also school canteens and the delivery market. So I hand over to Jana now.
Okay, thanks Maeva. So as Maeva just said at the previous slide, we had a longer list of concepts that we first tested with parents through one-on-one interviews, and from that longer list we then chose 14 concepts we thought would be best to just test with children, to see which concepts were most interesting to progress with. We conducted focus groups with children between 5 and 8 years old, and the children were split in groups by age and depending on their liking for vegetables, as can be seen in the right side of the slide. We conducted 8 focus groups with a total of 38 children, and each session was about 45 minutes long and was video recorded. And we showed A3 posters of each concept one by one, and the same questions were asked to the children for each concept. So what do you like or what do you not like about this concept? And then we had some specific questions, of course, for all the concepts. During the focus groups, children didn't taste any products. We just wanted to see their reactions to the ideas that we had. So I'll be presenting the evaluation results of 4 concepts into more detail now. And the first concept we'll discuss is the fairy dust concept. So as Maeva already explained, this concept consists of a powder which is partially made from vegetables and can be sprinkled on top of foods, or you can dip your vegetables in it. We tested with the children what they thought about this idea in general, and also when it was a plain vegetable powder, so for example carrot powder like you can see in the picture, and what they would think if this powder would be very sour or spicy. Most children were open to this concept, especially the dipping aspect of it was considered to be fun. Furthermore, they really liked powder to have a bright color. When we asked which vegetable flavor would be best, they mostly mentioned carrot flavor, but this may have been a bit biased by the carrot in the picture already. But then again, carrot was mentioned often during all focus groups for multiple concepts, so it would be a well appreciated flavor, we think. The sour tasting powder was really polarizing, so some children liked the idea of a sour powder. Others said they did not like sour at all, and the spicy powder was not appealing to most children. When we asked parents, they were worried about the processed nature of the powder, and they weren't too sure about the health aspects of it. So it would require really a clear explanation of how it's made. And then we can go to the next one. So the next concept to discuss is the pizza base with vegetables in a dough. And this one received mixed reviews. Most children said they liked to eat pizza, and they were open to the idea of pizza with vegetables. Overall, the different colors were found appealing, especially by the vegetable likers. They were also more open to the idea of a pizza base with vegetable flavor, while the non-likers, they preferred a normal looking and also normal tasting base, as they then know what they're getting. And they were worried that the pizza base with vegetables would taste very different from what they expect. The pink or the purple colored pizza base was appealing to many children, but they were a bit doubtful about the flavor if beetroot was in the base. The image of the different colored cauliflower caused more negativity than curiosity. Almost none of the children seemed interested in the purple or orange cauliflower pizza base. When we asked what flavors they would like for the pizza base, carrot, tomato and sweet potato were mentioned, both for their color and flavor. The children's reaction matched the responses of the parents. Some thought it was a great idea to have colored-based or colored pizza bases with vegetables, but some also mentioned it might put their child off from eating it because it's such a familiar and popular dish, and if it changes too much, it will be a bigger letdown. So the yogurt with vegetables is the third concept, and this concept was not very popular. Most children said they liked yogurt, but they associated it with flavors like vanilla, strawberry and mango. And most children were unsure about the idea of a yogurt with vegetable flavors, as it was really hard for them to comprehend how that would taste like. Overall, they liked the pink colored yogurt that we show in the concept presentation here. And especially the girls like this. But most children said that flavor was more important than color. It should taste good and not too much like vegetables. When we discussed the idea to combine fruit and vegetables in yogurt, most children liked that idea better than just vegetable flavors. They had the idea that fruit flavor could mask the vegetable flavor a bit. So besides the pink colored yogurt, there were mixed reviews about the other colors that we presented. Some children liked the bright colors, but some children had issues with the green and orange colored yogurts. Despite this, carrot and cucumber were still mentioned as acceptable flavors. We also discussed the different packaging possibilities, and you can see the pouch in the middle, and the children were a bit divided on the pouch packaging idea. It was sometimes mentioned as being for babies, while others mentioned it was really convenient because then they could eat and play at the same time at school. In the parent interviews, we had named the concepts unicorn slime and dragon spit to see if this would add another positive dimension to it. But we thought it would be a bit hard to discuss both the names and the actual yogurt concepts in one go with the children. But parents said they thought the names were fun and would make products more attractive to their children. They also thought the colors were interesting, but they weren't too sure about the flavors that we suggested, as they thought it would be more suitable for adults. And the last concept to discuss into more details are the vegetable dippers or the rainbow dippers. So to introduce the concept to the children, we showed a pack of cheese dippers from the Laughing Cow. Most children were familiar with these dippers, and they said they liked the dipping way of eating. Overall, most children were interested in this concept. They said breadsticks and carrot sticks were most interesting as dippers, and they also liked the different colored breadsticks more than the plain looking breadsticks. We're also interested in a mix of flavors in these multicolored breadsticks then. For the dips, overall the multicolored, or as we called it, a rainbow dip, was liked more from a visual perspective than a single color dip. But children were a bit unsure about whether they would like multiple flavors of the dip at the same time. So the rainbow and avocado dip were more liked than the cheese dip. When we asked which flavors the dip should have, the children proposed avocado, carrot, capsicum, hummus, and tomato. And parents were also positive about this concept and specifically mentioned the bright colors and it's a fun way of eating. So due to time restrictions, we couldn't discuss the result of all these concepts, but we've summarized the interest for the concepts on this slide. So children were interested in the concepts that are placed in the green box on the left. The three in the middle in the orange box, they got mixed responses, and the ones in the red box on the right were of low interest to the children. So as you can see, 6 of the 14 concepts were evaluated positively, and they don't need any or not many alterations when moving into product development. So these were the rainbow or the vegetable dippers, the rainbow squeeze mates, the fairy dust, the crunch and sip kit, the ice cream and ice blocks with vegetables, and the children's cooking kit. The 3 in the middle would need some adaptations to be successful with children, and the other 5 didn't receive good feedback. For both the ones with mixed reviews and the 5 with a low interest, we have some ideas that would improve their acceptance, and we mentioned these in the report that can be downloaded from the VegKit website. And I'll hand it over to Astrid now.
Yeah, so if we look at some of the key messages from this webinar, we can see that vegetable acceptance is very much a learned behavior, and a lot of that learning happens in childhood, so that's really a critical time. Providing exposure is key to building acceptance, and obviously in a product development setting that means that you need to have products that taste good and that align with children's expectations so that they are willing to eat them and then they will continue to eat them when they are offered to them. Then if we look at the factors that play a role in increasing children's vegetable acceptance, on the product-related factors, there's relatively little research done on each of them. But on the basis of the information done so far, we've proposed a new theoretical model that can support development of vegetable products and at the same time takes into account the person-related factors. And then we've shown through the concept evaluation some initial evidence of factors how they relate to the model that contribute positively to vegetable-based concepts. So The factors that we've confirmed through this research were bright colors as well as bite-sized pieces, fun shapes and a fun eating experience in general. A sweet tasting product or having some connotation of a sweet taste in general, a product being flavoursome and having an absence of a bitter taste. And as well, we've seen that a familiarity with existing products and with liked flavours can help increase. But at the same time, we've also seen that the tolerance around products that children are very familiar with can be quite narrowed in as well. If we then move on to one of the last parts of this webinar, so this is some information that is coming out of a different stream of the VegKit project, which is led by my colleague Gilly Hendry, who has done research on and developed a set of best practice guidelines to be increasing vegetable consumption amongst children. And there's 3 of those aspects that are very relevant to the product development setting as well. So first of it, how you can increase vegetable consumption is by increasing the amount that children eat. So eating more of vegetables at the times that they are already eating vegetables. So for products that could be increasing, for example, the vegetable content that is in a product, but at the same time, of course, we have to be very mindful that we maintain a good taste in order to get that repeated eating and interest. At the same time, increasing variety of vegetables increases vegetable consumption irrespective of the quantity that is offered. So that is also a good way. And last but not least, increasing the frequency. So focusing on occasions or settings where children are not very habitually consuming vegetables at the moment. So this could be a new eating occasion, could be, for example, snack time or breakfast time. And in terms of new settings, we can think of increasing a focus on new channels to be improving exposure to specific foods that are developed for children, for example, in a childcare setting or a primary school canteen setting. And then I'm handing over to Jess.
So where to next? We've shared with you the Syro-Kampov model and the insights collected from the literature review and how these can be combined to create vegetable-based products for children. So there are 3 main ways in which companies can take these learnings presented in order to develop new vegetable-based products for children or increase the vegetable-based offerings in their portfolios. So the concepts here can be taken by companies and put further into the MPD cycle to develop to suit different companies' needs. So there's no IP surrounding these concepts. While we have only gone into detail about 4 of the concepts in this webinar, the industry report that Jan has already mentioned is downloadable from the VegKit website, and this details each of the 14 concepts and the results of testing with children. The insights from the literature review and the Syro-Kampov model are also detailed in this report, and learnings can be taken from each of these aspects and applied to your organisation's specific needs in developing new products. With these learnings, you can do your own idea or concept generation for your own relevant product category. Lastly, the insights from the best practice guidelines that Astrid has just mentioned can assist you in creating new offerings of or occasions for vegetable-based products in order to increase vegetable intake for children and increase vegetable-based offerings in your portfolios. While there's no IP surrounding these product concepts, there are a number of ways in which you can work with us to further develop or progress any of these concepts or even your organisation's own ideas. If companies are interested in taking one or more of the concepts forward, CSIRO can assist them in the developmental phase of the MPD cycle through prototype development and in the tasting and analysis phases through consumer and/or market research and trained panel profiling. However, if companies would like to work with us on their own organisation's ideas, then we can assist in the idea generation and research phases through concept testing, targeted focus groups, product mapping activities, and market analyses. CSIRO has a dedicated trained sensory panel and the ability to run consumer testing with different populations, including children. In addition to the sensory and consumer science capability and facilities that we have at CSIRO, we also have a broad expertise in our food program, including food processing and engineering, applied and process microbiology, fermentation expertise, flavour science, and food chemistry. We also have dedicated pilot plant facilities at our Werribee and Coopers Plains sites where new products can be scaled up and tested. We are happy to further discuss and collaborate with you. Please email us if you are interested. So if you would like any additional information on the CAMPOV model, the literature review outcomes, or the concepts themselves, please head to the VegKit website at vegkit.com.au for the associated industry report, or contact us directly by emailing jess@jess.heffernan@csiro.au. And thank you again to our funding partners, Hort Innovation, through the Vegetable R&D Levy.